Ladies and gentlemen, we now move to our first plenary session for the 2024 summit. It now gives me great pleasure to invite our distinguished panelists up to the stage. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Karima Korri, the UN Resident Coordinator for Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei. Dr. Samuel Myers, the Founding Director of the Planetary Health Alliance, will be joining us online. We also have Ms. Claudia Farini, the Senior One Health Strategy Lead for the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs in the UK. Tan Sri Zakri Abdul Hamid, the Founding Director of the International Institute for Science Diplomacy and Sustainability. And the session will be moderated by Professor Elil Renganathan, Professor of Public Health and Policy at Sunway University. Professor Elil is a senior international expert with extensive leadership experience and expertise in public health, global health, evaluation and organizational learning, strategic planning and governance, collaborating with governments, UN agencies, non-governmental organizations, and academic institutions. He was most recently special advisor to the high-level panel for a global public health convention. Please join me in welcoming Professor Renganathan on stage.
Good morning, everybody. I'm just wondering whether you all can see me. Great. Because you were wondering whether we need to go here, but this is really good. Thank you very much. Good morning. Welcome to the first plenary session towards a safer planet for all. With me today, I have on stage Ms. Karima Korri, the United Nations Resident Coordinator for Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei. She has more than 20 years experience in international development and within United Nations and externally. And most recently, she led the 2030 Agenda Division at the UN Economic Social Commission for West Asia. Welcome, Karima. I have Claudia Farini, a senior One Health Strategy Lead to the Department of Environment, Food, Rural Affairs in the UK, and also One Health Warnings Lead at University College London's Warning Research Centre. Claudia connects health and environmental initiatives across various sectors, aiming to tackle their socio-economic drivers. Tan Sri Zakri Abdul Hamid, those in Malaysia know him very well, but I still need to introduce him to you. He's a distinguished professor at the International Institute of Science, Diplomacy and Sustainability at UCSI University here in Kuala Lumpur. He was the science advisor to the 6th Prime Minister of Malaysia and a member of the Scientific Advisory Board to the former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. And he is often regarded as one of the founding fathers of the UN Biodiversity Treaty. Joining us online is Professor Sam Myers. Many of you who are in this planetary health world know him. Sam is the founding director of the Planetary Health Alliance and a professor at the Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg School of Public Health. He directs a new cross-university initiative on planetary health in addition to his role with the Planetary Health Alliance. Welcome, Sam. I can't see you here, but I hope you're somewhere. And thanks for joining us. It's probably 9:30 where you are in the evening. I hope we don't keep you too long. So I'm very happy to have this excellent group of experts with us today. This is the first plenary, so the idea is for us to provide you with a better sense of the different frameworks, instruments, strategies that underpin and contribute broadly to our understanding of health and sustainable development, and also to consider how they may fit within the broader planetary health agenda. So basically, our aim is simply to set the stage and provide food for thought for your consideration during the conference. And the panelists are going to be around, and you can go and speak to them when you find them walking around. So Karima, really would like to hear your thoughts on where we stand with the current global frameworks such as SDGs, if you could give a quick stock take on progress, and maybe also say a couple of words about global processes that are there, Summit for the Future, Pact for the Future, etc. Please, Karima.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Elil. And good morning. And on behalf of the UN in Malaysia, I want to start by thanking I'll try to raise my voice. Is that okay? Better? Super. Well, starting with you, Tan Sri Jamila, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you for having me, and congratulations to Sunway University Center for Planetary Health and the Planetary Health Alliance for organizing this summit in Malaysia at such a critical juncture. I will definitely try to answer the questions now. The miracle is to do that in 7 minutes, as I was instructed to do. So I'll try to start, by really looking at the positioning of planetary health in the current global development framework and context. Then I'll try to talk a little bit about, progress, looking at planetary health from an SDG perspective, because that's the lens we have, and that is the blueprint for humanity, but also other framework on the, on the Summit of the Future. So the notion of planetary health integrates human health and well-being, and you're the experts, with environmental quality and balance, and that is done on multiple levels. It's therefore not really difficult to locate the concept and objectives of planetary health within the global development architecture. It's an indivisible and universal concept, fundamentally concerned with equity, inclusion, we heard yesterday, social justice, and it takes an intergenerational perspective. And the delivery of planetary health calls for a systemic diagnosis and a set of solutions that purposely, have basically that link between outcomes and processes, and basically linking the what of development to the how and the means that will enable us to get there. The parallels with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which was adopted in 2015 by the General Assembly, are undeniable. And the concept, although it is quite novel, definitely those connections to sustainable development run very deep. They don't only share common foundations like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or the Human Development Paradigm, or the Earth Summit outcome, Rio 1992, but they also converge around global frameworks, the SDGs for sure, but also the WHO's global strategy, the Paris Agreement, the New Urban Agenda, the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, etc. So all of these are UN sponsored or UN facilitated frameworks, but they all somehow converge, and working towards achieving the planetary health objectives basically aims to also achieve or will achieve SDG progress, and vice versa. And I think this is the link where we have that kind of cross-fertilizing relationship. Now, quick stock, where are we? And I think the title of the summit in terms of confronting the reality is not good, to be very honest. The reality is quite depressing. I will look at planetary health from an SDG lens, as I said, but looking more specifically on the progress report of the Secretary General in 2023 on SDG progress. And here, the facts and the evidence is quite sobering. Only 15% of the 190 and 169 targets of the SDGs appear to be on track, meaning that they are likely to be achieved by 2030. 15%. So you do the math, 15% of 169, that's not a lot. And looking at about half of them, 48%, that are totally off track, meaning they simply will not be achieved with the current, basically, trajectory that we have. And we also have 37% where we're seeing regression. And this is the most worrying part, is with all the efforts that we are putting into moving humanity to a more sustainable future, we're actually not achieving that. And that, again, is something that does not feed positively into the planetary health, perspective or agenda. I'll look quickly at SDG 3, SDG 2, so well-being and health and well-being and hunger and nutrition, but also the environmental goals. Very quickly, troubling picture. SDG 3 basically say none of the targets are on track, which means that we are not getting more healthy as people, as humans. We are seeing recorded regression, but we're also seeing very worrisome trends in terms of, not just because of the pandemic, but because of structural pre-existing, deficiencies and deficits in terms of achieving health for all. Position on SDG 2 is not great either. We are today around 770 million people are food insecure. And that number is not decreasing. It's actually increasing because of conflicts, because of breakups of crises across the world. So we are looking at going to 2030 with some outcomes that will be below our baseline of 2015. So the world is getting worse, not better. And this applies to a number of SDGs, and if we move to the SDGs on environment, SDG 13 on climate action, we know that 1.5 degree is a serious, is at serious risk today, despite the renewed commitments to decarbonization, despite the renewed commitments to, the loss and damage fund, despite, some efforts on adaptation. SDG 14 is telling us that oceans are not healthy. SDG 15 are telling us that life on land is not, going to be easy because, again, only about 30% of the targets are on track. So the reality that we need to confront today is a very bleak reality. And if we look at the entire picture of SDGs, of the 17 SDGs, and some, of them are really important for gender equality and others, progress is insufficient. And I know that these aggregates, and we know all that these aggregates hide nuances at the national level, at the subnational level, between communities, and the picture as a global aggregate definitely hides more, secrets and more truths. Now, what are we going to do about this? And I think maybe just saying that when the SDGs were adopted, we thought at the time that the environment in which they were adopted was an enabling environment. We thought that we had the means, and we put, as United Nations Secretariat supporting member states, we put in place those facilitators. So the Addis Ababa Action Agenda on Financing Development was put in place. The Paris Agreement came in December, and a series. So 2015 was quite a watershed. The problem is we are seeing today, because of this lack of progress, or very, very weak progress, that those enabling factors are actually not enabling, and we need to look at them. And this links me, or this is the segue to the Summit of the Future. We're looking today as a financing deficit on an annual basis of $4 trillion to fund the SDGs and to achieve SDG progress. That is very difficult to achieve. But fortunately, or at least a positive step, last September we had the political declaration and the SDG summit, and there was an agreement on an SDG stimulus of about 500 million every year to be put in place to accelerate progress on SDGs. These are factors that will perhaps lead us there, but we need more. And this is where the Summit of the Future comes, and the negotiations have started on the 3 outcome documents that will come out of the Summit of the Future in September 2024. The first one is the Pact of the Future, and I'll talk about it very quickly. The second one is a Global Digital Compact, and the third one is a Declaration of the Future Generation. Why do we need these? The question is totally legitimate. We need them because we need everything to change for progress to happen. And the Summit of the Future is going to be looking at some of the very difficult conversations. The reform of the Security Council, because we need peace and security to happen, for development to happen. The reform of the global financial architecture. The current setup of the Bretton Woods institutions is not conducive to development. We have 3.3 billion people that are living in countries that are so loaded with debt that they are not able to invest in education and in health. So this is the situation now and the reality that we need to confront. 5 areas where planetary health could be definitely beneficial and benefiting from the Summit of the Future. I'll go very quickly on them. First one, an equitable international financial system that reflects today's realities. The Bretton Woods institutions were created when most of the countries that are existing today did not even exist because they were still under colonial occupation. So the setup is not fit for countries that are trying to really pull out of poverty, out of vulnerability. We need to look at that, and the pact should have some very practical steps on what needs to change, because financing remains an obstacle. Second, adoption of new metrics to measure progress, and we talked about it yesterday, going beyond GDP, and mechanisms to anticipate and to respond to global shocks that are not just based on growth and economic performance. Third, a collective peace and security system that is equipped to prevent and resolve conflicts. I know that we are in a very bad place on this one, but definitely I think this reform of the Security Council, if it is pulled through by member states, is something that could facilitate that. Fourth is grounding policy making in science, knowledge, technology, and making sure that it is equitably accessed. And I think this forum today is definitely an example of how science can inform decisions. Fifth is major enhancement in terms of participation, particularly youth participation. We cannot do this without the future generation at the table, with a voice and with agency to make decisions. And I will conclude here, and thank you very much, and I could have spoken for much longer, but I will stop here, and thank you again.
No, thank you, Karima. I'm sorry to have rushed you on this. Yeah, thanks. Claudia, there's lots of talk about One Health. You heard about yesterday, the number of people said this. So maybe if you could tell us a little bit about One Health and highlight some of the key issues, and again, asking you the time constraints that we have in terms of...
No worries. First, thank you so much for inviting me to speak, and thank you so much for the opportunity to exchange ideas with such a wonderful people that I've gotten a chance to meet here already. I'll start with the definition. One Health was actually redefined in 2021 by the One Health high-level panel of experts as an integrated and unifying approach that aims to balance and optimize the health of people, animals, plants, and ecosystems. And is based on the recognition that their health is vastly connected and interdependent. And thus, in order to foster their collective well-being and tackle the threats that sit across and within these sectors, we need to be working across different sectors, across different communities, across different disciplines. The reason why I start with this definition is because it reflects an ongoing shift in thinking and action in One Health. A shift from its previous historical background that was focused on one medicine and bridging human and veterinary medicine to combat infectious diseases and improve surveillance, to thinking across hazards and sectors much more broadly, to looking at risk factors and drivers as well, and taking a system thinking approach. So while the environment is still an underrepresented sector in One Health, there's really been a concerted effort to try and integrate it more. Part of that comes from approaches like planetary health, eco-health, sustainable development goals, coming together and sharing perspectives and pushing for the system-level approach. In addition, that change in One Health thinking towards a more system-level approach has also led to changes in international governance and national governance. At the international level, we've seen the United Nations Environmental Programme being more involved in One Health, putting together a One Health joint action plan with the World Health Organization, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and the World Health Organization for Animals. And we're seeing the integration of biodiversity and health targets as part of the Global Biodiversity Framework, and hopefully also the new pandemic accord. That is also pushing governments to rethink the way they work across these sectors, and vice versa. For example, I see a lot much more departments of environment and food being involved in tackling health challenges and implementing this One Health agenda. My role in DEFRA involves setting a strategy to change institutional structures in the department to see how we can better foster One Health coordination and collaboration. But I really want to stress that many other countries like Bangladesh, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia have been doing these changes in governance and institutional structures to foster coordination and collaboration for much longer. And we have a lot to learn from them about system change in governance. So now let's talk about the future. Where should One Health be going forward? There's 3 key points I want to make. The first is that we really need to continue to challenge the human-centric, anthropocentric framing approach that has guided a lot of the times One Health efforts. There's still very strong power structures between human, animal, plants, and the environment in that order. And those structures, those hierarchies, are based on separations, on ideas of humans being separate from the rest, and One Health being about the interfaces where these sectors interconnect. But species are constantly interconnected. You cannot set clear boundaries and borders of where they interconnect. What that means is we need to be taking a much more relational approach, learning from indigenous communities that have been doing so for generations, taking an ecological, ecosystem approach to health as much as possible, and especially changing our thinking, our approach, our conception of animals from points of transmission, from contaminants to companions, to key to biodiversity, to soil, to communities' livelihoods, to cultural and spiritual well-being, psychological well-being, as well as being valuable in their own right. The second is that we need to continue to push for a shift in One Health towards addressing the core issues behind health and environmental challenges. Surveillance is critical, but it cannot be the sole focus or be used as a substitute to address the drivers behind this underlying crisis. And third, One Health cannot be apolitical. What I mean by that is most health and environmental challenges are driven by specific socioeconomic practices, political system, and cultural values. That means that taking a One Health approach should also be changing governance structures, from what is prioritized, to what is subsidized, to how our economic system is envisioned, to what is seen to have economic value, to the power structures behind them and the socio-cultural values that drive them. The good thing is I'm seeing that already happening with well-being economy frameworks being adopted by countries such as Scotland, Wales, Iceland, Finland. I'm seeing that in changes in our food system with the movement towards agroecology that joins both social and environmental changes together. And I'm also seeing that in the reimagination of cities and local governance, with the transition movement, bring communities all around the world, the Grounded Imaginaries project in India that truly inspired me, and donut economic models being adopted in cities like Amsterdam, Brussels, Berlin. So just to end in a few words, what makes planetary health, One Health, sustainable development goals go from buzzwords to something tangible is how we allow them to change us. Change our narratives, our perceptions, our imaginaries about our health, about how we relate to other species, about how we see our place in this world, and especially changing our actions to reflect those different visions.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Tansi Zakri, with your wide experience, you're probably best placed to tell us a little bit about biodiversity and what we can do to safeguard it.
Thank you, Elil. At the outset, let me congratulate Tuan Sri Jamila, Elil, and other friends at the Planetary Health Center at Sunway for convening this very impressive international conference for the first time in Malaysia. I came from the International Institute on Science Diplomacy and Sustainability at UCSI University. UCSI University is just across the road. But Tan Sri Jamila, it took me 2 hours to travel from UCSI to Sunway. that is just to illustrate the challenges. It's not only planetary health, but on things that we are facing today. Let me start by saying that you cannot talk about planetary health without referring to biodiversity. And biodiversity is that variety of plants, animals, and microorganisms that inhabit our Earth. So that is the basic thing. And biodiversity also is termed as the web of life because we rely on biodiversity for our own survival. The food that we eat, the water that we drink, the air that we breathe in are all part of biodiversity and ecosystem services. But as Karima was also mentioning, we are in trouble today. We are in trouble today. There is a big challenge of biodiversity loss. In 2019, the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, or IPBES, estimated that 1 million species of plants and animals are under threat of extinction. And the ecosystem services that we are relying on, 60%, according to another assessment, is under threat due to our own progress or progress, due to our own human activities. We have threatened this web of life. So, secondly, what I wanted to share here, I came in when the plenary speaker from Canada was ending her talk this morning. I just would like to quote a saying from the Native Americans. Ladies and gentlemen, if today our species, Homo sapiens, disappeared from here, from the face of the earth, the plants, the birds, and the bees would still be here today and tomorrow. But if the plants, the birds, and the bees disappeared today, humans would be gone tomorrow. So please remember that. Secondly, I must say, just to echo what Karima was saying here, the global community is taking this very seriously. In fact, 30 years ago at the Earth Summit, two important treaties were signed. And those are one, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and the other one is the UN Biodiversity Treaty, which has three objectives: conservation, sustainable use, access and benefit sharing of genetic resources. But Ellie, you know, there's a lot of mega meetings, there's a lot of talk. We heard not only the Rio Summit, there's also many more. Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Climate Accord, and eventually in 2022, the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. There is tremendous interest. There's a lot of talk, but I'm not sure whether there's enough work to do it. In fact, just now you also mentioned to address this problem is not only the awareness, but also the means to do it. And one of that is the funding. The funding is tremendous in the billions of dollars you want to halt biodiversity loss. And the picture is there to see. We are very well aware what COVID-19 has done to our civilization. I just want to end by discussing another point here. What does it take to change the thing? And I think you agree with me. One very important element here is the need for awareness, public awareness, education, but the most important thing is political will. Political will. Just compare for the UN Framework Convention, all those COP, they were attended by heads of governments, heads of states, hundreds of them. When it comes to saving the web of life, and this is about biodiversity and planetary health, the COP of the convention, the only head of state that will be there will be the host government, president or prime minister. So even though those two areas, climate change and biodiversity loss or planetary health, are two sides of the same coin, but the weightage is not there. How many minutes I have? Okay, one more thing. You know, in this country, Malaysia, Malaysians are so sentimental and committed to the welfare, the concern of what's going on in Gaza today. And then our Prime Minister, and we were proud of him when he stood up at a press conference in Germany a few weeks ago. And in fact, I took a leaf from that. I wrote an op-ed and appealed to him. I told him, yes, Gaza is an existential problem, but there's also another big existential problem here. The state of health of our planet. And I told him he should champion that. So far he hasn't responded. I don't think he will respond to me, a little man here. But you know, ladies and gentlemen, that is the issue. And today I appeal to you that this thing is a matter of life and death, you know. But we are not taking it seriously yet. So maybe with this issue of planetary health, by the way, Malaysia is also on the launching pad of this planetary health when Lancet and the Rockefeller Foundation launched it in 2015 at the UN University's Institute on Global Health, also across town. And we are very delighted that Tan Sri Jamila and you has picked up those and take it away. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tan Sri Zakri. Sam is waiting, and in preparation for any risks, I had suggested that Sam prepare a video, and he has prepared a very nice video. And Sam, if you don't mind, we'll play the video, and then I may come back with you with one very short question. Thank you. Can we have the video, please?
Greetings, friends and colleagues in Malaysia. I am so sorry not to be there with you all in person due to a conflict that I simply couldn't get out of, but I'm with you in spirit, and I know you've just had a rich discussion of different frameworks for thinking about how environmental change is affecting dimensions of human health and well-being. And I want to offer a little bit of a framework for thinking about this question of global environmental change and health, and for understanding the moment that we find ourselves in as a global society. It's a unique moment when we have seen really extraordinary improvements in most dimensions of human well-being. But at the same time, the scientific and technological advances that have fueled those improvements in health and education and wealth around the world have also been fueling this really massive ballooning of humanity's total ecological footprint, such that we find ourselves now in what many people have called the great acceleration in the size of our impacts across all our planet's natural systems, whether we look at biodiversity loss or appropriation of fisheries or addition of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, loss of forests, etc. And really, it's been a relatively recent phenomenon over the last sort of 50 or 60 years, underlain by these two fundamental trends of very, very rapid human population growth over that period, and even more rapid growth in per capita GDP. And when you multiply those trends, you get global sort of world GDP growth, which has really been exponential and extraordinarily steep, and is fueling what we are calling the Earth crisis, this sort of vast transformation of all of our planet's natural systems. Every year, to feed ourselves, we use 40% of the terrestrial land surface for croplands and pasture. We're using about half the accessible fresh water on the planet, mostly to irrigate our crops. We're fishing 90% of monitored fisheries at or well beyond maximum sustainable yield. We've cut down over half the tropical and temperate forests, dammed over 60% of the world's rivers, and are suffering from this growing problem of pollution of air, water, and soil. And as you all know, we're disrupting the global climate system. So all of these human impacts across our natural systems are now driving the 6th mass extinction of life on Earth. We're losing species at 1,000 times the baseline rate. We've lost about 2/3 of the birds, reptiles, mammals, fishes, and amphibians that used to share the planet with us only 50 years ago. And about 1 million species are facing extinction, many within the next few decades. So this is the scale of the Earth crisis that we're facing, and the sort of core precept of the field of planetary health is that the size of humanity's ecological footprint exceeds our planet's capacity either to absorb the waste we're producing or to provide the resources that we're using sustainably. And as a result, our own activities collectively are transforming not just the climate system, but again, biodiversity loss, biogeochemical changes, land use changes, pollution, etc. And that all of those biophysical changes, anthropogenic biophysical changes, are interacting to affect the sort of foundational conditions for human health and well-being. Quality and quantity of food that we produce, the quality of air that we breathe, our exposure to infectious diseases, our exposure to extreme weather events, even the habitability of many of the places that we live. And we're seeing increasingly these impacts across each dimension of human health. So when we think about this moment, what we're really starting to understand is that just as we understood a decade or two ago in the field of public health that there are important social determinants of health and political and cultural determinants of health, now we're coming to the realization that there are critical ecological determinants of health, that our health is nested in a set of biophysical conditions, and that those conditions are now changing at the fastest rate in the history of our species, mostly in response to our own activities. There are other frameworks, and you've just heard about some of them, for thinking about how anthropogenic environmental change is affecting human health and well-being. There's a rich climate and health community that is sort of a cousin of planetary health that really explores the dimension of one ecological driver, the climate change, and how climate change is affecting all these different dimensions of human health. Another framework is the One Health framework, which emerged before planetary health and really has a strong focus on zoonotic infectious diseases, or certainly did historically on diseases that are transmitted between either wildlife or domesticated livestock and human beings. And it's an incredibly important field, and more recently has begun to sort of expand its framing to really include more ecological determinants. So this is the moment that we find ourselves. It's the moment that I think we've come together in Malaysia to grapple with, where fundamentally the way we are living is now choking the life out of the planet. That we in the global health community can no longer effectively safeguard human health, while the natural life support systems that we depend on are starting to crumble under the weight of our own ecological footprint. And so how do we meet this moment? How do we think about the sustainable development goals and supporting human development into the future? And I think there's been a real evolution in that thinking, from initially framing it as 17 sort of discrete and disconnected development goals, to a recognition that there's actually sort of a hierarchy, in the sense that these sort of core goals of stabilizing the biosphere and the climate system are foundational, and that without stable biophysical conditions and natural life support systems, that we'll never be able to achieve the other goals of ending hunger or protecting global health or addressing poverty effectively. And now we're starting to understand that we really need sort of a holistic framing of these goals as completely interconnected and interdependent. And we need integrated metrics so that we can measure success without celebrating success in one area that comes at the expense of a different area. And instead, how do we have integrated metrics that shows our society developing in a way that is shrinking its total ecological footprint while optimizing physical and mental health? And I think that's where we're going. And I think that the framing of this conference, from evidence to action, will be all about how we develop more holistic interventions that can help shape the way we're living on this planet, to bring it back into balance with the natural systems that we depend on. So I hope it's a wonderful, wonderful conference. I'm so sorry that I can't be there in person, but I'll be following along virtually, and I can't wait to hear all your stories at the end of the conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam. If we could get Sam back on. Sam, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I don't know if you can hear me.
Okay, good. Thanks, Sam. No, thank you very much for that video, and also, bringing up the concept of ecological determinants of health. And to be fair to you, since you've been there, I still want to offer you the opportunity to say, give a short comment in relation to what you have heard so far today.
I know we have very little time, so I don't want to say very much, but I'm thrilled with the conversation that's gone before. I thought that Nicole Redver's comments were perfect, and that the conversation afterwards really complemented that. The need for sort of recognition that there's a convergence in the framing of planetary health with indigenous determinants of health, the need for more holistic definitions of health, and what you're seeing in the conversation that was just went on before about the sort of convergence of these different frameworks, with One Health sort of broadening the way it thinks about things, with the SDGs recognizing the interconnection of of the goals, I think we're all coming to the same place, which is an understanding that we all depend on the state of our natural life support systems, and that the state of those systems is fundamentally not good, and we need to redouble our efforts to address protecting and regenerating those systems if we're going to have a livable future for ourselves or the rest of life on Earth.
Thank you very much, Sam. You basically, helped me by providing the summary for the session. So I just want to finish. I just want to end basically telling you that what we tried to do here was to set the stage, yeah, and give you a sense of what we need to be thinking about, provide some food for thought as you move ahead. Because of time constraint, we're not going to take any more questions, but the panelists are around, speak to them, and once again, huge thanks, Karima, Zakri, Claudia, and Sam, thank you very much as well, yeah? And thank you all, and have a good day. Thanks, bye.